Hi, we're wrapping up McMurray tonight. We're just going to go through this very quickly, and then I'm going to have a film that I put up there that's on YouTube that you can watch in its entirety. It's got what do you call it? Captions. It's got English English subtitles. Family status changes that are taking place. We've got we've already talked about. See, we've already talked about some of this cultural, social, and economic capital or financial capital. So the nouveau riche, like Hadu and the others who are working in Germany and getting all this extra money, and then they bring it back. And so they're seen as nouveau riche. They're seen as people who don't have a lot of class, even though they have a lot of cash. Um, they don't. They're lacking that cultural and social capital. The cultural capital is easy to get in in a few years of reading, maybe some innate abilities to dress well. You take the time and work on your speech, and you can figure out cultural capital pretty well. Um, Social capital, though, takes a lifetime of really social climbing, a lot of um, pressing the flesh and making friends and contacting people and getting your kids into key relationships and institutions. And usually, social capital doesn't come until 3 or 4 generations. If you remember, I don't know if you've been reading novels or something from the 19th or 20th century, and you have all these um, um, pork kings of Chicago who are fantastically wealthy, billionaires, and so they build like what looks like a Scottish castle in some suburb of Chicago, and they send their kids to Harvard or Princeton. And send them on European tours because they're trying to get their kids, and their kids are made fun of course, by all the old rich who are not nearly as rich as this Chicago pork king is. Um, but they have the class, and so they talk about them behind their backs. But eventually they marry up. They marry into European royalty, or some poor nobleman or something like that. And then the grandkids and great grandkids especially act like they belong, basically, and know all the right people. uh, Gender and modernity and clothing, the two sides of modernity. He's talking about his living with his wife, and um, he was wearing Western clothing, and his wife was wearing um, uh, um, traditional clothing. And I'm trying to do it here. The wedding pic is always nice because you can see the husband dressed in a bow tie and the wife with a veil on. Let's see any more of these for Egyptian couple. Let's look for Arab couple. That might be a little bit better. Trying to show a post-colonial um, examples here. Unfortunately, these are all Gulfy people. Oh, there's one there. You can see the wife wearing traditional Islamic garb with the veil, and the man looking like he just stepped out of Wall Street. Uh, any more of these? There's one. Uh, Traditional clothing for the wife, Western clothing for the husband. Uh, let's look up Indian couple. Indian couple. Okay, that's not very good. He's wearing traditional clothing. He's wearing traditional clothing. There we go. Sort of a little bit. I'm looking for a man in a business suit and a woman in a sari. Uh, there we go. Just basically saying that this is an idea coming out of a South Asian academic called Partha Chatterjee, who talks about the thematic and the problematic. So um, thematic modernity. Just to sort of give you the background here, thematic modernity is basically guns and tanks and bombs from Ghosh. This idea that technology um, and medicine are the good parts of modernity. The problematic modernity has to do with women's liberation and sort of liberalism in general. Freeing young people from the constrictions of family, opposing religion, opposing traditional authority, anything that resists traditional authority, we could say. And that is a problematic part of modernity. So there's this idea that that thematic modernity, the good modernity, is associated with men. So the man in the family can go out and brave the world of modernity, can go to the Western education, and can go into the boardrooms dominated by white Europeans, and wear that business suit and get that master's degree in engineering and get that job, and be out there 24/7 fighting the hard fight. Whereas the problematic modernity is fought best by the woman. So this is the association with femininity, resistance to which is associated with femininity. Sorry, I'm just sort of fleshing it out here. So the problematic modernity is a modernity that makes us lose our religion, makes us lose our values, makes us lose our faith, our religious belief. Western modernity is dangerous because it's secularism and it's science. And science is a good thing if it helps you, heal people and make better weapons. But science is a bad thing if it makes you reject your religion and turn your back on your family. And so resistance to that is associated with femininity, and that's why women have so much pressure placed on them to wear the traditional clothing and to act in traditional ways and to be sort of religious and pious and all the rest, whereas men can go off sort of into into modernity and brave it that way. Women have to brave it by resisting it. So this is how we see modernity and restriction in women's movement on the basis of both of them responding to different aspects of modernity. Modernity and restriction in women movement. We don't really need to talk about that one, but modernity and restriction in women's movement. We talked about this already. That women are women who don't need to go to the neighborhood bath, and women who don't need to go to the neighborhood oven are rich women. If the wealthier you are, the more restriction can be placed on your behavior. So there's a bribe. There's a bribe going on there, and it's you can marry a rich man. And get access to all that wealth and have your kids go to the best schools. But the payoff for that is that you will be more restricted. You'll be more closed in, and you won't venture outside of your home except when you're heavily veiled. And he can afford to do that. He can afford to keep you not working. Because you guys don't need the income, right? If you're ordinary working class family, no man can afford to do that because the wife has to work too. Everyone's got to work to make this family happen, and so modernity, the wealth enables access to modernity, which restricts women's movement as a result. And so we're reading it backwards. There was an anthropologist who did a study of religious women across Cairo, and so she looked in downtown. She looked at like a big mosque where this is about women leading Quranic studies. And teaching these classes to other women. And she looked downtown at a big mosque with a lot of very wealthy women, and nobody was wearing a veil. Like 2 or 3 were wearing just the face veil, because they're they're spending their summers in the south of France. They're university professors and stuff like that. So they're not going to veil. They're coming back to religion after years of atheism. And then she looked down in the south of the town, in a poor working class neighborhood, and every single woman, like 90% of the women, had the face the veil covering their neck, what they call hijab. And there were a few with a full face veil, and there were a few unveiled. But most of them had that hijab on because they're working class women. They've got jobs outside the home. They wear that veil to enable their access to the outside world. Um, and then she looked at sort of upper middle class women in a sort of a rich suburb, where a lot of their husbands are business owners, fabulously wealthy, millionaires, but they're upper middle class women, and they are religious and they are very conservative, and every one of them had a niqab on. No, like 80%. 80% had niqab, and the rest had hijab, and no one had went with showing off their hair. And that's just how it is. Wealth indexes conservative politics and fundamentalism up into a point, and then once you get above that point, then it drops. And once your nouveau riche runs out, and you've got you're more stable in your class position, and people accept you as rich, then you don't have to try so hard anymore.